Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 1302, Absolute Law. Sunny froze, paralyzed by the whisper of the spell. What? Had he heard right? Had it really said? A fragment of Shadow's domain. Of a god's domain. No, wait. What even was a divine domain, and how could there be a fragment of it? How could there be a fragment of any domain, for that matter? Weren't domains more concepts than things? What could a fragment of a concept look like? Sunny took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Slow down. Think. Most importantly, don't fall off the ketch. He was so out of it that he had almost swayed and tumbled over the side of the boat. Sunny was more than fed up with suddenly falling into water, thanks to the spell, so he hurriedly took a step back. A fragment of Shadow's domain. Come to think about it. Hadn't he heard something similar once? During the second nightmare, when they assaulted the Ivory City, the moon had been suddenly devoured by an enormous shadow, and the world was plunged into darkness. When that happened, Noctis said that he had not expected Severus to possess a piece of Shadow's domain. Ivory Dragon Severax was a direct descendant of Sun God and an immortal saint, and yet it was strange for him to possess something like that. And now, Sunny received a piece of a god's domain, too. Damn. Sunny needed a few minutes to calm down. During these minutes, his imagination ran wild. He fantasized about all kinds of developments, from immediately becoming a sovereign to instantly ascending to the divine rank. However, his rationality eventually won. It doesn't work like that. Indeed, possessing a fragment of someone else's domain did not mean having one of your own. More than that, the Ivory Lord, who had used his piece of Shadow's domain to seal the moon and rob Noctis of his power, had not shown any ability above what a so, while the fourth aspect relic of Shadow Dance had to be immensely valuable, it was definitely not a broken cheat item that would turn Sunny into a god among men. Saint from a divine bloodline should have possessed. So, while the fourth aspect relic of Shadow Dance had to be immensely valuable, it was definitely not a broken cheat item that would turn Sunny into a god among men. Yes, but just what the hell is it, and what can it do? He threw a sideways glance at Nephi's and Anank, then turned back to the shimmering runes. And where the hell is it? Sunny read the runes from the very first one. Name, Sunless. True name, Lost from Light. Rank, Ascended. Class, Tyrant. Shadow Cores. Shadow Fragments. Memories. The Crown of Twilight was the last memory on the list. The fragment of Shadow's domain was not among the memories. Neither was it among the echoes, shadows, attributes, or abilities. In fact, there was no indication of it anywhere. Wait, no. What is that? A single new rune appeared close to the end of the shimmering field of symbols. Sunny blinked as he stared in that direction. Aspect abilities. Aspect legacy. Flaw. Dream anchor, Tower of Longing. What are those question marks? He concentrated on the rune that had no meaning except for the lack of it, and there were suddenly a few more beside it. Sunny's heart skipped a beat. The new runes read. Description: when Shadow made death, he has become death. Everything that Shadow swallowed died, and everything that died was swallowed by Shadow. Death was an absolute law, and thus, that which was ever-changing no more. Time was an absolute law, and thus, that which was everlasting no more. Space was an absolute law, and thus, that which was endless no more. Wielding time, space, and death, the gods defeated and bound their enemies. However, there were those who defied even absolute laws. One of these beings broke free of the Shadow Realm after being swallowed by it, and in doing so, splintered several small fragments of it. This is one of the fragments. Sunny stared at the runes, perplexed. Huh. Then, he stared at them some more. Huh. Finally, he dismissed them. Huh. An entire minute passed in complete silence. Well, I'll be damned. It seemed like he had finally encountered something that existed outside the purview of the nightmare spell. Which was why the spell was struggling to integrate the Shadow Realm fragment into its generally all-encompassing system. All the question marks and the awkward placement of the fragment in the field of runes showed that much. For some reason, that made Sunny feel dark glee. He was reveling in the image of the spell being stumped and flustered. On second thought, though, he quickly strangled that feeling. Sunny was more than certain that the spell could read his mind. And while it was not exactly alive, most likely, he wouldn't go as far as to say that the spell couldn't hold a grudge. No, no. It is completely understandable. I also can't make sense of that thing. Yeah. The point was that the fourth relic granted to him by Shadow Dance could make a fragment of the Shadow Realm descend into the world. What that entailed, exactly, Sunny was not sure. He had seen it happen once, in the second nightmare, and it caused the moon to be obscured by a giant shadow. Considering that he was a master of shadows and even one himself, something like that would definitely be very beneficial to him. It was just that Sunny had no idea what the summoning would cost him, how it would transpire, or what the actual process was. He didn't even know if it could be done only once, or repeatedly. Which was why he was hesitant to experiment and find out. What would he do if the very first experiment turned out to also be the last time he could use the Shadow Realm fragment? As the seven suns drowned in the waters of the great river started to shine, Sunny sighed and shook his head. Well, at least, if I am surprised by how that thing works, my enemies will definitely be surprised much more. Then, he shivered. If a fragment of Shadow's domain was the fourth relic of Shadow Dance, then what the hell would be the fifth? Chapter 1303, The Great and Terrible Lord Sunless. Eventually, they ran out of food. Anang's wooden box was now completely empty, except for the plates and cups that Sunny had washed and carefully placed back. There was not even wine left, despite the fact that neither he nor Nephi's were fond of alcohol, diluted or not. The old woman seemed stricken by guilt at the lack of things to feed them. Although she was not that old anymore. Anang looked to be in her 60s now. Her figure remained small and gaunt, but her back was as straight as an arrow. The cataracts disappeared from her eyes, revealing their original piercing blue color. The thin white hair of the elderly priestess turned gray and full, and although her tanned skin was still mapped with wrinkles, it was not brittle and transparent anymore. Her frailness and fragility were gone, replaced by wiry tenacity. Overall, she resembled quite a healthy old woman now. That old woman was currently pacing the wooden deck, crushed. Oh, no. Oh, what a blunder. I should have prepared more. Sunny and Nephi's looked at each other in confusion. After a few moments of silence, Neph cleared her throat and said, "Granum. Anang. You don't have to worry about us. Sunny and I, we are both used to hunger and hardship. This is nothing." The old priestess looked at them silently. "But you are children of Weaver. How can I?" Nephi shook her head. "How do you think children of Weaver live?" Anang fell silent, then said hesitantly, "I don't know." Sunny sighed and leaned on the side of the ketch with a smile. That one once spent 2 years traveling through desolate hells all alone. I recently led numerous refugees across 3,000 kilometers of abomination-infested mountains in bitter winter. We are used to storming the strongholds of dreadful horrors, clashing with titans, and surviving all kinds of unspeakable things. Hell. That one time, Nephi's destroyed an entire sun. So believe her when she says that going a few days without food is nothing. The old woman stared at them silently for a while, her eyes wide. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Your glory rivals that of the Serpent King, my lord and lady." "No wonder, no wonder." Sunny raised an eyebrow. "Serpent King." Anang nodded with a distracted expression on her face. "Yes. Darren, the King of Twilight. We never met him or his people, but rumors of his deeds reached even Weave." Sunny scratched the back of his head. "Oh. I met him, though." The old woman froze. "My lord. You met the Serpent King?" He nodded, slightly embarrassed. "Yeah." Then, Sunny looked away and added, "I killed him." Anang's blue eyes widened, prompting him to hurriedly add, but he was already corrupted. It's not like I just killed him for no reason." The old woman remained silent for a while, then quietly sighed. "Fish. I am going to catch some fish. We will be arriving at Weave soon, but still. My lord and lady shouldn't suffer hunger while in my care." With that, she turned away from them with a determined expression, which failed to hide a look of pure amazement. Sunny chuckled quietly and closed his eyes, enjoying the warmth of the 7 suns on his face. After a few moments, though, he opened them again and glanced at Anank with curiosity. He still wasn't sure how exactly one went about catching fish in the Great River. As it turned out, Anank had a very strange idea of what fish was. First, she opened a hatch and produced several items from beneath the storage space beneath the deck: a large ceramic bottle, a bundled rope with a jagged hook attached to it, a set of heavy stone weights, and a scattering of softly shining soul shards, which were all stored in a transparent water skin that seemed to be made from a swim bladder. Then, she grabbed the bottle and climbed onto the helmsman bench, looking at the water from above. When Anank opened the ceramic vessel, the stench of blood spread through the air. The bottle was, indeed, full of blood. The old woman whispered several words, which Sunny couldn't really make out despite hearing them clearly. At the same time, the catch suddenly started to slow down, and a subtle, imperceptible change spread through the world. He suddenly did not feel as safe as he had before. Our concealment is broken. As Sunny tensed, Anank poured the blood into the water and outstretched one of her hands. A whirlwind of sparks appeared around it, and soon, a long harpoon manifested itself into existence. Rising the harpoon above her head, the old woman inhaled deeply, and then spoke one more word aloud. In the next moment, it was as though an invisible and intangible shockwave spread outward from the catch. Sunny did not know what its purpose was, but he felt something stir deep within his soul. The thick blood dissolved in the water, causing it to turn red. Then, as if responding to a call, a swift shadow shot toward the catch from the deep. Crap! Sunny scrambled to his feet, but before he could do anything, Anank's wiry arm whipped forward, and her harpoon tore through the air with a fierce whistle. It plunged into the water and disappeared from view. A minute later, the old woman dragged the corpse of a fallen nightmare creature onto the deck. The abomination was not too large, with a grotesquely deformed body and flesh that resembled a sponge. Sunny shivered in disgust. We are going to it. That. The old woman shook her head. No, my lord. This is simply the bait. She summoned a curved knife and skillfully sliced the carcass of the creature open. Its blood refilled the ceramic bottle, while its soul shard joined the others in the transparent water skin. Finally, Anank lodged the jagged hook in the abomination's flesh, attached the stone weights to it, and pushed the bladder of soul shards inside. Everything was done neatly, with practiced speed and precision, as if she had performed these actions 1,000 times before. Sunny and Nephi's watched her silently. Eventually, he rolled his shoulders and asked, if this is the bait, then what exactly are we catching? Chapter 1304, Fishing in the Great River. Hearing his question, the old woman smiled. This close to weave? I hope it's a big maw. Their meat is very tender. Before they could ask what a big maw was, she grunted and threw the dead abomination, as well as the stone weights, over the side of the catch. As the bundle of rope swiftly unfolded, Anank swiftly tied its end to a wooden post at the stern of the catch with a sophisticated knot. Soon, the bleeding carcass of the nightmare creature was being dragged a fair distance behind the boat, slowly sinking into the great river. The old woman took up her harpoon again, this time gripping it with some tension. Her weathered face, however, was calm. After waiting for a few minutes, she sighed. Usually, it would be an entire fishing party challenging the depths. But I am the only one left, so. Anank remained silent for a moment, and then smiled. Do not worry, my lord and lady. My harpoon has yet to miss. The fishes I catch never manage to swallow me up, either, and they won't today. Sunny and Nephi silently looked at each other, then summoned their weapons. However, there was no need. When something massive finally rose from the depths, attracted by the scent of blood and the fragrance of soul essence, Anank swiftly readied her harpoon, gazed at the water, and sent it flying with one decisive motion. Soon, they were roasting the meat of a corrupted monster over a bronze brazier. The fish the old woman had caught turned out to be a giant shark-like creature whose body was covered in tough bone armor. However, the harpoon had slid past the bone plates in the only spot where it was possible, above the creature's hidden gills. Sunny did not know what enchantments Anank's weapon possessed, but after striking the abomination in its weak spot, the harpoon killed the big maw in one blow. The monster was then dressed down, its succulent meat filling the wooden box, as well as the much larger storage space of the covetous coffer. As she seasoned the roasting meat with salt, the old woman sighed. In the past, we would have harvested much more. Skin, scales, bones, swim bladder, fangs. Nothing would have gone to waste. There are very few building materials to be found in the vast waters of the great river, so maintaining a city is not an easy task. We river people have learned to use every resource available. She placed a long strip of meat on the grill and shook her head. There's no need to be so frugal now, though. I am already thankful to the river for this sustenance. With it, I can feed Lord and Lady. That is enough. Sunny hesitated for a few moments, then asked, but isn't it very dangerous to hunt the corrupted this way? You never know what will come from the depths, after all. This time, it was a corrupted monster. Next time, it could be a great one, or something even more dreadful. Anank nodded, still concentrating on preparing a meal for them. Of course. It is very dangerous. Many fishermen die. Remember, though, that we were much stronger before. There were elders leading us, as well. The truly harrowing creatures very rarely come down the river, too. When they did, we usually learned in advance, and the whole city assembled to battle them. That is how we've survived, until it didn't. Sunny sighed, thinking about the dying civilization of the great river. There was presumably only one human city left in the tomb of Ariel, fallen Grace. How were they supposed to turn the tide of history and save it? His somber thoughts were interrupted by Anank, who placed a juicy piece of meat on a plate and offered it to him with a smile. Her teeth had turned sturdy and white at some point. My lord. Please, enjoy. She seemed to be in a good mood. Looking at the smiling old woman, Sunny couldn't remain sullen, either. 2 days later, something finally appeared on the horizon. It was a shining dot at the start, but as the catch drew closer, the shape of a distant lighthouse could be seen, with sunlight reflecting from its polished bronze spire. This was the first human-made structure that Sunny and Nephi's had seen in the nightmare. Looking at it filled their hearts with emotions. Nephi's, especially, looked at the lighthouse with a distant expression. Its radiance reflected in her eyes, illuminating their ineffable depths. Sunny shifted and turned to Anank, who was still holding the steering oar. Have we reached Weave? She lingered for a few moments. A boundary of it, yes. The old woman fell silent after that, and Sunny returned to Nephi's. Noticing her distant, almost forlorn expression, he asked, "Are you thinking about your first nightmare?" She nodded slowly. With a sigh, Sunny placed a hand on Neff's shoulder and pulled her closer, allowing her to lean on him slightly. He didn't say anything, and neither did she. Together, they watched the lighthouse draw nearer. Soon, the ketch moved close enough for them to see the details. The lighthouse stood on a small island. That island, however, was not a natural one. Instead, it seemed to have been crafted from the carapace of a sea monster and floated on water, supporting a large and solemn hall built of dark stone. The lighthouse rose from the hall, serving as its tower. There was a long wooden pier protruding into the flowing waters of the great river, as well. The strangest part, however, was that the island did not seem to be drifting with the current. Instead, it remained firmly in place. Another startling detail was that the dark lighthouse with its shining spire was not a lighthouse at all. Instead, it was a windmill. Its long blades rotated slowly, pushed by the wind, white fabric rippling slightly as it circled between land and sky. The island looked quite surreal, especially after weeks spent seeing nothing but flowing water. But it must have been really beautiful at night, illuminated from below by the opalescent radiance of the river. Anank finally spoke, her voice a little low. "This is the House of Parting."